on the front screen. There we go. Okay, good afternoon. We're delighted to be joined today virtually by Asim Iftikhar, the Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, and Julien, the UN's Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator for Pakistan. They will brief you on the launch of the flood response plan for Pakistan. But before that happens, I have an announcement to make. With the tragic situation facing millions of men, women, and children impacted by the historic floods in Pakistan, the Secretary General will travel to the country next week for a solidarity visit. He's expected to arrive in Islamabad on Friday, 9th September. He will then travel to the areas most impacted by this unprecedented climate catastrophe. The Secretary General will meet with displaced families and will also witness how we are working in collaboration with our humanitarian partners to support the government's relief efforts and provide assistance to millions of people. The Secretary General will be back in New York on September 11th. So with that announcement, I will turn to our guest and I will ask Asim Iftikhar, please, to start off, and then we'll turn to Julien. Mr. Iftikhar, please, you have the floor. One second. If I could ask, please, to have him unmuted or to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you for this time. All right, if we could just try testing the line again. No. If I could ask the engineers to please try to figure out what the problem is. No, cannot hear you.
Right, I understand. I wouldn't touch the settings manually because the
All right, excellent.
it works.
All right. Please, Asim, please go ahead. I think we can finally hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan, and our colleagues joining us from New York. I think you would have followed earlier this afternoon. We jointly launched the UN Flash Appeal, the 2022 Pakistan Floods Response Plan, simultaneously from Islamabad and Geneva, and I'm thankful to the UN country team, ably led by Julien, who's with me, for the tremendous effort that went into launching of this Flash Appeal. I don't want to go into details because I'm sure all colleagues followed the launching and the statements by the Foreign Minister, the Secretary General's remarks, and other interventions by various speakers, including the member states. But I think utilizing this forum, it would be pertinent to highlight a few aspects. One, to begin with, the gravity of the situation. So as the Foreign Minister said also earlier today, we are facing a catastrophe that is simply colossal. The loss of life and devastation, they are huge and they are widespread and they are countrywide. And clearly, this is yet another case of climate-induced disaster. And if I quote what the Foreign Minister Bilawal said, that we are in the midst of the climate catastrophe of the decade, one that has ravaged the entire country in a humanitarian disaster of unimaginable scale and magnitude. And he said what we are facing today has been no above average monsoon. Since mid-June, Pakistan has been feeling one of the most severe, totally anomalous cycles of torrential monsoon weather. And I think the Secretary General termed these monsoons very correctly when he said it seems that these are monsoons on steroids. And the result of all of this is before us. It has triggered both urban flooding, river floods, hail torrents, and landslides, resulting in loss of human lives, livelihoods, and livestock, and severe damage to property and infrastructure. While the entire Pakistan is impacted, but the most impacted regions are central and northern Pakistan, particularly Balochistan and Sindh. And it is very evident, many observers have noted that the scale of this disaster perhaps exceeds the mega floods of 2010. So I think that is the scale of this calamity. And it is very clear that this is climate related. And for Pakistan in particular, I think this is an occasion to also note that while we are amongst the least contributors to the global carbon footprint, we are amongst the most vulnerable. And these last 10 to 12 years have clearly manifested the kind of damages that Pakistan has had to incur because of the climate-induced disasters. Just to give a little bit idea on the scale of this calamity, it has impacted over 33 million people. Over 1,100 people lost their lives, and this includes women and children. Over 1,600 people have been injured. Over 1 million houses have been totally or partially destroyed or damaged. Over 700,000 livestock have perished, and very worryingly, over 2 million acres of cultivated land with crops have been damaged. So I think this is very clear that the impact of this disaster on the people, on the livelihoods, and the overall economy of Pakistan is very huge. And more importantly, critical infrastructure has been damaged, and it has impacted severely the relief and recovery efforts. So this was, a little bit about the extent of the damage. Now, on the response side, and I think there are so many positives on this. Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, in fact, the entire nation have come together. We are leading the response to this challenge, of course, assisted by the UN system and our international partners. And I think this response has been very characteristic of Pakistan's traditional resilience, the solidarity that we express towards our people, and the kind of resources and capabilities that we can muster, with the full contribution and engagement of the Pakistani people. I think that is very, very evident. So just to give you an idea of the kind of national effort that has been deployed, first of all, in terms of financial resources that have been allocated, over 170 million US dollars equivalent has gone into direct cash transfers. I think this is very important because to over 1.5 million families, 25,000 rupees, that is equivalent of $115, are being transferred directly to the Benazir Income Support Program. And what we heard today, that this is very significant in terms of the initial response to the crisis. And separate allocations have been made for the National Disaster Management Authority, and obviously there are those who have lost their lives, those who are injured, and for the houses that have been damaged. So this, I could say that, the entire nation has come together in terms of mobilizing a significant response to this huge, catastrophe. But the important point to note is that while we have deployed all possible resources and capabilities, the scale of this disaster, it simply exceeds these resources and capabilities. I mean, we are stretched to the limit. And that is where the role of the international community, the solidarity and the support that comes in. And that's why I think the splash bill is of great significance, because this is a call to action. This is reminding the international community that there is this situation which is not of Pakistan's making. It is a climate-induced disaster. And while we are trying to tackle it with our own resources, it is very essential for the international community to step forward and assist. And we are seeing this already on a daily basis. So you must have been following the reports, the pledges, the announcements that are coming in from our development partners, from the international institutions, IFIs, World Bank, ADB. Everyone is engaged. You must have been following the news of air bridges being established by countries such as Turkey, UAE, China, others. Huge assistance being announced by many, many friends from Azerbaijan to the US and others. So I think there is this enormous outpouring of support and solidarity from our partners, and this is very much appreciated. But I think most important thing to note is that while today we are in the recovery and relief phase, this is going to continue for some time. We have mobilized national resources, to support this response. A UN flash shield will help in this regard, and our appeal to the international community is to come forward with significant announcements of support, which will facilitate the efforts to be deployed by the UN. But more important will be the next phase of this entire endeavor. While we transition to the reconstruction and rehabilitation, I think the requirements are going to be huge, enormous. We are making a full and exact assessment of the kind of damages that are there, but the Minister for Planning already mentioned this morning a ballpark figure of more than $10 billion. So I think this is going to be significant. This is something that we want to highlight. We want to project it through this forum for our partners in the international community, that as we will transition to the rehabilitation and reconstruction phase, we look forward to continuing and sustained international commitment and support coming Pakistan's way. I think the commitments that are already there and the flash appeal that has been launched, it will provide momentum. It will hopefully trigger more significant mobilization of assistance coming towards Pakistan. And that is going to be very, very important because we have this joint responsibility, I think, to help these people who have been affected, to guide them back to normal life. And so in this context, thank you for sharing this good news that the Secretary General would be traveling to Pakistan. I think this is going to be significant. This is going to contribute in a big way to our collective effort to highlight the impact of this disaster and to utilize this visit by the Secretary General to mobilize further international assistance. So we'll be looking forward to welcoming the Secretary General. With this, I think I will conclude. I understand more information about the flash appeal, the sectors that the UN intervention is going to focus. I leave it to Julien to highlight that a little bit.
Thank you. So I'll talk to what I've seen of the response so far and what our role, the United Nations and our NGO partners are in contributing to that. So comment on the scale of the catastrophe is just extraordinary. I was in the Kech, in the far border of Pakistan alongside Iran, a desert area where, while there was no flooding, the population there completely lost date harvest, which is their livelihoods for the coming months. And then in places like Sindh, you have millions of people on the move because district after district is underwater. It's really, and then in the mountainous areas of Balochistan and KPK, you've got hundreds of bridges washed away, houses destroyed. It is extraordinary that these rains and floods can affect such a vast country as is Pakistan. Now, as big as is the catastrophe, the mobilization is impressive. Across the country, I've met deputy commissioners organising people at village level, town level, to get the response together. And the BISP cash grant, pretty extraordinary. Work with the National Disaster Management Authority and the provincial disaster management authorities, the provincial governments, they're all out there getting organising. And what's been really impressive is the Pakistani people themselves, the philanthropy at village level, at community level, as those who have little give to those who have nothing. And so there is a significant mobilization in Pakistani society and the search and rescue of the military. There's work going on. We've also built over on what happened in 2010. We developed these social protection mechanisms. There are humanitarian response facilities across the country. So we're building on the lessons of the past to deliver more appropriate response. The UN's flash appeal with our NGO partners will build upon that. So we will be looking for $160 million that will provide essential medical services, nutrition services, that will complement the work of BISP, will complement the work of NDMA. The response is under the coordination of the NDA, the National Disaster Management Authority, and at the provincial level, the equivalents. So this is our contribution, the international contribution to a government response. That international contribution is necessary because things like tent factories in Pakistan, the capacity of the country has been reached. They're just simply, there's so many people are displaced that you cannot find tents here. So we're having to look abroad to bring in absolutely essential services. So there's one is an element of reaching capacity limit, but the other is that of international solidarity. This is driven by climate change. This is driven by industrialization. It is the unwanted consequences of industrialization. And so international solidarity is appropriate. The UN's already started responding. We've already invested $7 million in Baluchistan, KPK, and parts of Sindh. International NGOs have raised $5 million, and they've also started responding. But this is only the beginning. This flash appeal is absolutely essential. We're grateful to the support of member states and others, but a lot is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. We'll take some questions. Edie Leder, Associated Press.
Thank you both very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. A couple of follow-up questions. I know you just talked about NGOs raising $5 million. Have you gotten any other pledges? And I assume that you're going to be trying to have whatever's pledged turned into cash very quickly because of the enormity of the disaster. And are you also looking ahead to, I know Mr. Iftikhar mentioned reconstruction and how important it's going to be. When do you expect to be launching what I assume will be a massive request for funds for reconstruction? Thank you.
I don't know which one of you wants to go first. But...
So I'll cover the element on what was the reaction to the flash appeal that we did this afternoon. So we've sort of seen three elements. Firstly is direct offers of assistance, a lot of it supply to the government of Pakistan, which is excellent. We've seen Turkey offering tents, China, UAE, Qatar have all offered supply assistance, and some of that's already arrived. So that's an extraordinarily important element. And then just in this afternoon, we've seen announcements of very significant commitments by the United States, but also other countries that such as Azerbaijan. So we're seeing a generosity across countries, which is good. We'll be following up with the member states to see exactly when that's coming in. There will be a challenge with the in-kind supplies, as that's going to require a significant logistical operation, and the World Food Programme is already supporting the National Disaster Management Authority to help bring that forward and get that delivered. The other element, which is going to make our work more challenging, is there's a lot of private philanthropy, from the diaspora through faith-based organisations in the UK and other countries, which is excellent. We want to see people-to-people supporting each other. It's going to be a real coordination challenge to bring all that together to make sure it's done the most effectively. So we're seeing the beginnings of what is necessary to respond. But this appeal is only done quickly so that we could get it out there because it was so needed. It does not cover all of the needs that will be revealed in the coming weeks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julien. I think a couple of points. One, on the response plan or the flash appeal, our understanding is that, we have launched this. This is the initial plan and corresponding requirements, which is about $160 million. But as happens in the case of flash appeals or response plans, and this is what we saw in the case of 2010 mega floods in Pakistan, we started initially with more than $450 million, and with subsequent revisions went up to $1.9 billion by November or December of 2010, with a couple of months. So I think this is one aspect that is in our mind. But as you mentioned, this transition from relief, recovery to rehabilitation and reconstruction, that is something that we are attaching special importance to. Only yesterday, at another high-level meeting that was chaired by the Prime Minister, the National Flood Response and Coordination Center has been established. The main purpose of this new entity, very high-level entity, will be not only to steer the country to the relief phase, but to utilize this time in the interim to plan and launch the bigger plan, a national plan, and for which we will be seeking international support for reconstruction and rehabilitation. And I'm sure our development partners, the IFIs, would play a significant role in that. And we would be working with the UN, of course, with regard to define the contours of that plan and how to mobilize the international assistance. With regard to this element of philanthropy and social work, I think this is a big asset that Pakistan has. Over the years, our people are known to be very, very generous in terms of providing social support, responding to natural disasters like this, and this, in a way, complements the efforts by the government, and also, I would say, reduces to a large extent the requirements from the international community. So most of the immediate needs in terms of cash, in terms of food supplies, medicine, many of this is managed by self-help basis by people, individuals, civil society, and humanitarian organizations. And I think this is very characteristic of Pakistani people, and this also shows the spirit and the resilience of our nation, which is very, very significant in terms of keeping the morale high and responding to such mega disasters.
Thank you. We're going to go online to Iftikhar Ali, Associated Press of Pakistan. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Steph. My question is to my namesake in Islamabad. Sir, although it is too early, but where exactly are you going to take the Secretary General in the most affected areas of Pakistan to highlight the enormity of the floods?
Yes, thank you, Iftikhar sir. Good to see you again after a bit. We've just received the information from the UN. I think Stephen broke the news. So we will be planning the visit of the Secretary General, his meetings in Islamabad, and visits to some of the most affected areas. I think logically, I'm not in a position to say right away which places the Secretary General will be visiting, but you can imagine that this will be amongst the most affected areas, could be Sindh, Balochistan, or even in KP as well. So we will have to see how this will be arranged.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. James?
James Bays from Al Jazeera. To demonstrate the enormity of this, can I ask you, how long do you fear that Pakistan will be affected by this? I mean, you've talked about crops being destroyed, buildings being destroyed, livelihoods affected. How long do you think this will blight Pakistan? How long will it take to repair the damage?
I think it seems that it's going to be a long haul. As you mentioned, the entire crops have been devastated. So, it's a cycle that will come into play, and it will take time. Even, this flash appeal covers the period of 6 months. And we will see, what kind of further updates or revisions to this, even this flash appeal will be there. But in terms of the impact, the medium to long-term impact on the economy, I think we'll come up with clearer estimates of the losses to the agriculture sector, losses to the social sector, and the overall impact on the country's GDP. So I can envision that it's going to take some time. And so in that context, this is really untimely because we were already faced with an economic situation which was not very good, which was further exacerbated by the consequences of the situation in Ukraine. So already the economy was under some strain. So this huge impact by this disaster is going to have, its ramifications, and that's why we said that our real focus, as soon as this relief phase is over, will be on the medium to long term, on how to reconstruct, how to build back better and greener. I think this will be an added element when we rebuild, to take into consideration the climate-related best practices for reconstruction.
Can I build on? I'd like to build on to just sort of describe a bit the challenge. So if I was to simplify, you've got essentially two crises. In the mountainous areas of Pakistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, you've got up to 149 bridges that have been destroyed or washed away, and tens of thousands of homes. So you've got a physical infrastructure damage, and that, to build 150 bridges, that is going to take years. So there's a physical infrastructure, but the people in those areas will be able to return to their homes relatively quickly. If we then go down into the plains of Sindh, elements of Balochistan and southern Punjab, there you've got, if you can imagine a bathtub, it's a bathtub full of water with a very small hole which allows that water to drain out. And so you've got this huge, what's become an enormous lake, which has displaced millions of people. That is draining very slowly because it is very close to sea level. And so for that water to go away will take, in some areas, maybe 2 months, maybe more. And then even when it does drain, it's you're going to have land which will not be usable for weeks. So the displacement period in those areas will be in the measure of months. Then if you take families, with all that livestock that's been lost, livestock, a buffalo or a cow for a family here is their savings. It's their livelihood. So, these families, they lose their livestock and they've lost years of savings. So there is going to be an impact on society, the loss of livelihoods, the loss of capital, which is going to scar society for a significant time. So this really is going to be a massive challenge, and it's going to require us to work hard together to address that over a long time. Thank you.
Sean Nichols, Reuters.
Thank you. A question for the Pakistan Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman. Just taking a step back, given the focus on climate change and the responsibility of the more developed countries to take the lead in tackling this, what would Pakistan now say to China in the wake of this flooding, given that China has cut off cooperation with the United States on dealing with climate?
Well, this is not about one country or the other. I think, and this is what we have been saying consistently, climate change is a threat that is for all countries of the world. Why we are highlighting what's happening to Pakistan is that we are amongst the least contributors or least emitters of greenhouse gas emissions, but we are at the receiving end of the consequences. So, Pakistan has been for years amongst the 10 most affected countries by climate-related disasters. So, we are very concerned about our situation, and we are concerned about the situation of other countries who are in the same category, not contributing to this problem, but being at the receiving end. So that's why I think our consistent messaging to the international community, and especially to the developed world, is to really work on and to respect this principle of common but differentiated responsibility. And I think a clear manifestation of the will to implement this principle is to really, for the international community, when everyone is saying, doesn't matter, which country. You must have followed some of the member states who spoke today. You must have followed the mainstream international media. Everyone across the board is relating this to the climate impact. And I think we're not going to talk about one country or the other. We are talking about international solidarity. And we are talking about a cooperative environment in which all countries will come forward and fulfill their commitments to the climate change agenda. This is what we are asking for. So that's why I think it's very clear we've been consistently saying the developed countries should also fulfill their commitment towards this pledge that was made in Paris in 2015 of 100 billion US dollars per year towards the climate effort, which has not been fulfilled. There are other commitments that have not been fulfilled. So I think this is time for the international community to seriously look into this issue. This is what the Secretary General said this morning. Today it's Pakistan, tomorrow it could be another country. This is very serious.
Thank you. Edward, China Central TV.
Hi, Mr. Iftikhar and Mr. Harneis. This is the Zhishu with China Central Television. So first, we're very sorry to hear all the losses, and we saw those horrendous pictures of more than 1 million houses destroyed, more than 5,000 kilometer roads, and 243 bridges so far have been destroyed by this flood. Just want to ask, do you have an estimation of, in numbers, how much does it cost by the flood so far? And for Mr. Harneis, because you just mentioned it took months for some part of the country to recover from this flood. But for this flash appeal, $160 million, what would be the time frame? I mean, how long can this money help the organization and the UN to help people in Pakistan? And thirdly, you just mentioned the country has already reached the capacity of all those assistance, and you especially said tents. So I just want to know what's the most needed thing so far for Pakistan to have this flood relief. Thank you.
Thank you. I think on the, and these are very important questions actually. So this question is being asked, the estimates of the total damage. It will certainly be in billions of dollars. We'll have to, and we're working on this to come up with figures that would be close to the to the actual damages that have been incurred and which are credible. The planning minister mentioned this morning in terms of requirements, and this is just an estimate. He mentioned over $10 billion, but I think the National Flood Response and Coordination Center that I mentioned earlier, one of the tasks for the government will be to come up with these estimates. But it's very clear that these are going to be huge numbers. Secondly, I think this is something that came up in the joint press takeout that the Foreign Minister and Julien had after the launch of the appeal. Most of the questions you would recall were, in the direction asking the UN, asking the international community as to how quickly and how credibly, assistance will be flowing in, and which will, enable Pakistan to cope with this. And so I think this is something that needs to be highlighted, that there's not much time, and given the scale of this disaster and the really life-threatening situation that people who are faced with this situation, especially in the areas that Julien mentioned again, which are totally flooded. And the Foreign Minister was mentioning he was visiting certain areas where there was not even dry space to cook food. So, this is a very, very serious situation. So the expectation from common people, from the media, from the civil society is to how quickly these requirements will be met and mobilized. So this is why we are saying time and again that our resources, the national resources that are at hand, they are limited, they are stretched, and it is really time for the international community to step forward in a big way to assist with this relief effort, and then going forward in a very sustained manner to assist with the
Thank you for Edward for the question. So what matters to the people who've been affected is a speedy response. So they can't afford for us to do long, detailed, complicated assessments to work out precisely the numbers, the exact numbers, and the duration, etc. So this flash appeal is designed as a very rapid estimate of what is needed right now, with a view to 6 months. But with the idea that as we do go forwards, we're going to put out assessments, work with the government to provide more detailed assessments, assess, and to better understand the impact and who's being displaced where, and et cetera, et cetera. So this, within that 160 million, the areas where capacity has been reached by government distributions are firstly tents. As I mentioned before, the manufacturing capacity has been reached out. Secondly, is mosquito nets, bed nets, particularly important. And then there's food. The cash assistance via Venezuelan Capital Support Program is excellent, but there's places in where even if you have money, you can't buy it because there's nothing but water. The shops are flooded, and as Asim said, you get food. There's no firewood to cook it. So in the immediate, today, people need food, and I've seen that in villages across Sindh and Balochistan, where people are out there standing in the street looking for food. Whole villages displaced, not having eaten for days. So, despite all the work of local philanthropy, despite the work of government, so food distributions in the immediate term are essential. But at the same time, we're also looking at some health challenges. We've already had cholera in Pakistan for some weeks now, and this flooding is likely to significantly exacerbate that. So we're going to be looking at waterborne diseases, and that is going to. So we're going to need to immediately a strong health response, and I'm most grateful to my colleagues from WHO for their leadership in this area and the support they're providing to the Ministry of Health. And then malnutrition. We expect a significant increase of severe acute malnutrition for children. Malnutrition services, another immediate essential priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Ephraim, Arab News.
Thank you very much. Quick follow-up on the number of people that need assistance, especially in Balochistan and Sindh. You spoke, Mr. Resident Coordinator, of the importance of this speedy response. We've been hearing from many of those people living in those villages that although this catastrophe has been going on for a month, no one has reached out to them yet. Do you have an estimated number of the people that need assistance, and what would you tell those people? How fast do you think can they expect aid soon? And a question for the spokesperson as well. This is a question that comes back every time an event like this happens, where the debate occurs again of whether or not countries who are historically responsible for the biggest emissions of carbon dioxide should pay to cover the cost of disasters like this one in nations that are less wealthy. Do you, for example, the United States, do you see it the same way as well? Do you think this should happen as well? Thank you.
So then, on the speed, so the rains have been going on for weeks, and some areas, such as parts of Pakistan, were impacted 4 or 5 weeks ago, and there we saw destruction. However, the large number that we see, mainly in Sindh, of massive displacement, that's only happened in the last days, more or less a week, where up until up until about 7-8 days ago, we had hoped that the level of the flooding would be manageable. And then suddenly we had very heavy rains, hill torrents, water coming downstream, a confluence which has led to this massive flooding. So for those areas that are in, say, Balochistan, where we've seen the impact some weeks earlier, the response is already ongoing. More can be done, more can be done faster. I've seen the works of UNICEF doing water distribution. I've seen the works of the government. It's not enough, and we need to scale it up. And that's why the flash appeal is so important, because without a flash appeal, we can't get in the money which will allow us to increase our response. For the areas in Sindh, it's going to be a very tough time, because to get to that scale of assistance quickly is very challenging, and it's further compounded by the fact that there's district after district where there are no roads. Hence, the government has pulled upon the military logistics. So it's going to be, you don't have a good answer to that when you see somebody in those circumstances. All we can say is we're trying our hardest to get out there as fast as possible, and we're grateful for the international support which allows us to do that.
Thank you. I think with regard to your the question, the linkage of these disasters to climate change, I think I spoke about that in my opening remarks and in a subsequent question also. I think this is very, very evident. We are facing the situation which is a clear manifestation of the direct and unmitigated consequences of climate change. As I said earlier, Pakistan is amongst the least contributors to the global greenhouse emissions, but we are really at the receiving end of the consequences, of the severe consequences. So we are, as the Foreign Minister said this morning, Pakistan is in the front lines of the devastations caused by global warming. And this mega flood, like it was the 2010 mega flood, it has once again shown how much vulnerable we are to such recurring climate shocks. So we are saying it regularly, we at the top of our voice, that such episodes are becoming all too frequent and increasingly more devastating. And this is what the Foreign Minister said, that both in the spirit, climate justice, in this term we use climate justice, as well as humanitarian assistance, the international community needs to step up and share the burden with those most affected. And Pakistan is amongst those countries who are most affected. And I think everyone agrees with what it says, that countries that are historically responsible for the phenomenon of climate change, they should bear the bigger burden of coming forward with assisting in such situations.
Thank you. And the last question, we'll go to Stefano Vaccara. Stefano?
Stefano Vaccara, Voce di New York. The question is about how do you consider the reaction of India's government so far? Do you expect help, more help? And could a disaster like this at least improve the relationship between the two countries?
Well, thank you. I think you would have seen the statement from PM Modi tweet. I would say that this is a humanitarian situation, and it's natural, it's logical for countries and people to set aside, other considerations and to express support and solidarity. So in that context, we understand. But if you're talking about the wider picture, unfortunately, I think we've seen that this this attitude, this positive attitude that would build confidence, that would restore the common relations between our two countries. Despite the goodwill that Pakistan has consistently exhibited in recent years, we don't see that being reciprocated by our friends across the border. So I think there is this problem that is lingering and is related to the situation in the region, very difficult conditions in occupied Kashmir. So I think there is a host of very sensitive and serious issues that need to be addressed between our countries, and that's why we've been saying that we expect to take certain steps, certain action that would create an environment that is more conducive to the resumption of dialogue.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for staying with us such a long time and taking the time to answer all of these questions. We look forward to hearing back from our UN team maybe in a few weeks to see how the efforts are going. And again, with our thanks and wishing you a nice rest of the day. Thank you. We'll now continue on with
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. So I'll just...